Quality is guaranteed. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, I just started to talk to Reg. I was just about to say, should we watch a film tonight?
I want to do that.
Yeah.
I can't.
No?
Got no time.
Oh, time.
Go back and do more uni.
Oh, bless you.
And wash my hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Struggle's real, babe.
Yeah, back to work tomorrow. Boo. Never mind.
Well, if more people listen to us, we can do this as a job, and that would be freaking amazing.
It'd be awesome, wouldn't it?
We would love that, and then we can do more content. And just be like full-time spooky biatches with Goobs.
That's a fucking dream.
And
He's
Reg.
a spooky biatch.
And Ed. Yeah, they're all spooky biatches.
Yep.
You're leading this one.
I am leading this
I
one.
was just about to go into it, and I'm like, no, I'm not leading this one.
No, it's an Allie-centric episode.
Yay.
They don't happen very often.
When they do, they're a freaking gem.
Yeah, but they're always really fucking long.
It's okay.
Although, to be fair, this one isn't a two-parter for a change.
Okay.
I mean, it could be drawn out as a two-parter, maybe, but I'm not going to do that.
Okay.
I think we can do it. I can do it.
You've got this, babe.
There's a lot of notes, though, mind.
Yeah, that's
Still.
okay.
Okay. So, I'm going to, after the last two episodes we've recorded, I'm going to bring it down a notch to a sad level.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we got all our laughs out, I think, on the last one. So it's time to get serious.
Right, we can do that.
And I'm going to head straight into it, if that's all right.
I can go for it, babe.
Okay, so it was 8 o'clock on a beautiful spring day in Bath, Michigan, and the children from the village were settling in for a day of learning at the Bath Consolidated School. The date was the 18th of May, 1927. Not long after the day began, Leona Gutekunst,
No, I wouldn't be able to say that.
a second grade teacher, was reading to her class. As she reached a pivotal moment in the story, an enormous roar shook the building, covering students in white plaster dust. They essentially were so covered they looked like ghosts.
Ooh.
And this was the day that hell came to Michigan.
Oh my gosh, that's very ominous, isn't it?
It is. So a little bit about Bath. It was the Bath Township, and it was a civil township. So what that means is it's like a widely used unit of local government in the United States that is subordinate to a county.
Okay.
And it's located 10 miles from the city of Lansing in Michigan, obviously in the USA. Mm-hmm. During the 1920s, the area was predominantly agricultural. During this time, schools were just one room with different grades sharing the same classroom, same teacher. But people were starting to see that children could receive a better education if they were educated in a single facility and separated into sort of grades by age group, that kind of thing. There was a lot of controversy and debate about this, but after a lot of planning, the local district built a new school, which they called the Bath Consolidated School. A tax was levied to pay for the project, but it meant that those who owned property then had to open their wallets, and that obviously not everyone was accepting of that.
No, they'd be like, F that, brah.
So it was Oscar Wilde that once said, nothing in life is certain apart from death and taxes. And this is going to be the story of a guy who took that a little bit too far.
The bed.
So I'm going to take you a little bit back. On the 1st of February in 1872 in Tecumseh, Michigan, Andrew Philip Kehoe was born into a family of 13 children. There's not a lot known about his early years, but it's known that he did attend sort of the local high school, and then he went on to study electrical engineering at the Michigan State College. Later, he moved to St. Louis. He worked as an electrician for several years, and it was during this time that Kehoe suffered a head injury after a fall. There were a couple of sources that said that he was in a coma for 2 months, or he was semi-conscious and comatose for several weeks. Either way, it was a traumatic head injury, and it could offer some explanation as to his actions that he carried out later on.
Yeah.
We won't know, but after recovering, he did move back to his father's farm back in Michigan. Whilst he was still young, Kehoe's mother passed away. His father remarried a lady who was also widowed, called Frances Wilder, and together they did have a daughter. Kehoe and Frances didn't get along. When he was 14, Frances went to light an oil stove in the kitchen, but the stove exploded, setting her on fire.
Oh my God.
Reportedly, Kehoe watched as Frances burned and after a few minutes put the fire out, but her injuries ended up being fatal.
Oh my gosh, that's
Neighbours,
awful.
neighbours were suspicious that Kehoe had been involved in the reason why the stove exploded.
Oh my God,
as
that's
well.
really scary.
In 1912, at the age of 40, Kehoe married Ellen Nellie Price. They'd met at college, and after 7 years of marriage, they then moved to a farm just outside of Bath. Nellie came from a wealthy family, and the farm and its 185 acres was bought from one of her uncle's estates. Andrew Kehoe was considered an intelligent, articulate and dependable fellow, although slightly odd. He was quick to help others, incredibly neat, and enjoyed tinkering and adjusting his farm machinery. So he was always sort of looking for new ways to make things better on the farm, that sort of thing. But in the same breath, he was impatient, quick to criticise and throw a tantrum if he didn't get his own way. Bit of a trigger warning, but I won't go into details. There were reports of cruelty to his animals.
Nope. He can fuck right off with
And
that.
the animals in the neighbourhood. But
Okay.
I'm refraining from discussing what. He also had a reputation of being rather frugal, so a bit tight with his money. This is what helped him get elected in as a trustee of the school board in 1924, and he held that position for 3 years. He was also treasurer for a year. He relentlessly campaigned for lower taxes, stating that the high taxes were causing financial hardship. Me too, babe, me too.
Yeah, right. So he sounds like a colossal bed, but then he has got some good points.
He's got some slightly redeeming qualities, but they are completely forgotten.
Right.
Not very long.
Okay.
That was really bad English.
It's fine, I knew what you meant. It made perfect sense to me.
So he believed a lot of the town's outgoings were wasteful and for pointless purposes. The superintendent of the school at the time, M.W. Keyes, said he fought the expenditure of money for the most necessary equipment. Kehoe did attempt to get his taxes lowered by trying to have his property revalued at a reduced price. During this time, Nellie was also chronically ill with tuberculosis, which added hospital bills to their mounting debts. And along with the high property taxes, the 5-year-old Bath Consolidated School was the icing on his troublesome cake.
Oh dear.
At some point in 1926, Nellie's uncle had passed away by this point, but his widow, who held a mortgage for the property that Andrew and Nellie lived in, began foreclosure proceedings. Sheriff Fox served the foreclosure notice, and then he claimed that Kehoe said, if it hadn't been for that $300 school tax, I might have paid off this mortgage. Nellie's aunt, Mrs. Price, the mortgage holder, also reported that Kehoe had threatened, if I can't live in that house, no one else will, when she told him about the foreclosure. So that's a threat, isn't it?
Yeah, that is definitely a nefarious conversation.
So it was the increase in taxes, Kehoe believed them to be illegal and unfair. He also believed that one of the school board members, Emery E. Hayek, to be his enemy, and that he tried to influence other board members to vote for the higher taxes. I mean, nobody wants higher taxes.
No, exactly.
But it was necessary if they were, going to sort of put into the education system of that area. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? The money has to come from somewhere, and if you want your children to be educated and have a sort of a possibly better future, that's what happens.
Yeah.
As a result, Kehoe became obsessed with the school board politics, Emery Hayek, and the injustice of property taxes, which he believed to be ruining his life.
Right.
In 1925, Kehoe was appointed as town clerk temporarily, but the April 1926 election, he was defeated, and it was this rejection that people think angered him. And there's one of the Bath residents, Monty Ellsworth, he self-published a book in 1927 called The Bath School Disaster, and it's his thought that was the reason Kehoe had planned his murderous revenge. A. McMullen, one of Kehoe's neighbours, noted that he had stopped working on his farm and speculated that Andrew Kehoe may have been planning suicide. Kehoe had given McMullen one of his horses in April. I put 1027, it wasn't, it was 1927. But McMullen returned the horse because that is what he suspected, that Andrew was going to commit suicide.
Right.
So it's not quite clear when Kehoe conceived the idea for the bombing. There are some sources that say people believe it had been since the August of the year prior. M.W. Keyes, the school board member, was quoted by the New York Times as saying, I have no doubt that he made his plans last fall in 1926 to blow up the school. He was an experienced electrician and the board employed him in November to make some repairs on the school lighting system. He had ample opportunity then to plant the explosive and lay wires for touching it off. Obviously, Kehoe, as a board member, appointed to conduct the repairs. He had like free access to the entire school, so his presence was never questioned. Mm-hmm. Nobody was like, "Oh, what are you doing here? Why are you here?" That sort of thing. At some point in the summer, Kehoe did begin buying large quantities of pyritol, which is an
Incendiary.
Thank you. Which is designed to cause fires, basically. Yeah. An explosive. It was first used in World War One, but farmers also used it for excavation purposes and burning debris. So as a farmer, Kehoe buying small amounts of pyritol at different shops didn't cause any alarm, didn't rouse any suspicions. Neighbours reported hearing explosions on the farm, explained away by Kehoe, saying that he was removing tree stumps, and he was nicknamed the Dynamite Farmer.
No.
In November 1926, Kehoe drove to Lansing and bought 2 boxes of dynamite at a sporting goods store. After the Bath School disaster, it was reported that Michigan State Police had discovered a considerable amount of dynamite. Sorry, I'm sounding funny because I've got my retainers in.
That's fine.
I'm like,
It sounds absolutely fine, my darling.
I feel like it's sounding very salivary.
It's okay. We don't care.
Very gross.
I mean, it's a miracle either of us are talking at this point. So
I have gone from energy levels to energy levels just from laughing.
that's just our lives.
So a considerable amount of dynamite had been stolen from a bridge construction site, and Andrew Kehoe was suspected of the theft. He'd also bought a .30 caliber Winchester bolt-action rifle in December 1926.
He just sounds like a troublemaker to me.
Yeah, and it's just, I mean, I don't understand. Nobody likes higher taxes.
No.
You can't.
Blowing things up is not going to help that or change things.
I mean, like a rage room, maybe. But
rage room. That's what he needed.
He needs a rage room.
Yeah.
But, if this fall was really bad, then this head injury could clouded his judgment, maybe. I don't know.
That's happened to a lot of serial killers, hasn't
yeah.
it? Where they've had head injuries and they sort of think, perhaps that's had something to do with it.
Well, it even goes for, people who suddenly become depressed after a fall or, start having cognitive issues.
Yeah, makes total sense. It's logical, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. So throughout the spring of 1927, he began transporting the pyritol into the school. He did it in small increments so that nobody would notice anything out of the ordinary. He used to calculate exactly what he needed each day and just sort of brought in that amount. So it was very, stealthy.
Yeah. Very calculated.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He'd volunteered to fix the wiring and instead wired explosives throughout the basement of the school, connecting various charges beneath the floors and in the rafters. He used to slither into subfloors and crawl spaces and hide large amounts of the pyritol behind pipes and beams. Over time, he managed to run thousands of feet of wire throughout the building, all under the feet of unsuspecting children and teachers.
That's so sinister.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
You think you'd want kids to have an education?
There's just, it's definitely not impulsive because there's so much forethought in what he's doing and so much planning.
The planning is incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a wrong one.
In the May of 1927, he'd completed his diabolical plan and he set the charges and waited. He also wired his home in the same manner. So every farm structure was rigged with a series of homemade firebombs, so crude devices that were made from containers filled with gasoline, wired with automobile spark plugs attached to a car battery.
Oh.
The backseat of his Ford pickup truck was loaded with metal debris, so that would be things like nails, old tool, pieces of farm machinery.
It's like a giant nail bomb.
Yeah.
That's so scary.
So that, and anything else they could find that would create the shrapnel and cause sort of ultimate devastation in an explosion. Dozens of wrapped sticks of dynamite were packed under the front seat, and the rifle was placed on the passenger seat next to him. He'd also bought new tyres for the truck to avoid breaking down when transporting the explosives. So again, that's even more calculation.
Yeah.
He's thinking of kind of like everything.
Yeah.
Evilly clever.
Yeah, well, a lot of times they are, though, aren't they?
Yeah. And it's not like he was setting out to be a serial killer. He just wanted to cause the most devastation possible. And you'll see that as we go on. A lady that lived next door to the school called Ida Hall saw activity around the building on several nights during that May. Just after midnight on one morning, she saw a man carrying objects inside. She'd also seen vehicles around the building several times late at night, which she told to relatives, but never reported them to the police.
Always be overcautious.
Yeah, and this is the thing, this could have been stopped, essentially, if they'd been able to investigate it.
Yeah.
So Nellie was currently, at that time, at the St. Lawrence Hospital in Lansing, and on the 16th of May, she was released. So she'd been undergoing sort of treatment for the tuberculosis. There was no cure for it at the time. It was just a case of what can we do to manage perhaps the symptoms, but even then, not a lot.
They used to just give them fresh air, didn't they, really? Just like sit them out on, what do you call it?
You were going to die, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So during that time between her release and the bombings, even possibly the day after she was released, Kehoe bludgeoned her to death with a blunt object.
Oh my God, I did not see that coming.
Oh, there's some twists in this.
No, bruv.
Because of the explosion at the farm later on, they could never determine what object was used to kill Nellie. And Kehoe dumped her body into a wheelbarrow, pushed it to the rear of the chicken coop at the back of the farm, and then when they did find her, what was piled around her was like jewellery, silverware, and a metal cash tin that was filled with burnt banknotes. You're basically f***ing yourself over.
Yeah.
Even more so.
That doesn't make any sense.
No. It's even worse later on. After abandoning Nellie, he then completed wiring the farm ready to explode it. The homemade firebombs were placed in every single building, and if everything went according to his plan, the property would simultaneously explode and burn to the ground before help could arrive. There would be nothing left for the bank to foreclose on.
No.
Again.
Are animals in the buildings?
Yeah, but I've left that out.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's fine. I left that out. So, what he said to Mrs. Price, if I can't live in this house, no one else will. It's coming to light. On the morning of 18th of May 1927, a day like any other, the children were arriving at school laughing, jostling, chatting, pushing and shoving in the hallways, hurrying to the classrooms. Unbeknownst to them, literally just inches beneath their feet, more than 1,000 pounds of explosives waited for an electrical current that would change the course of their lives forever. At approximately 8:45 a.m, just 2 miles from the school, Kehoe detonated the firebombs in his house and the farm buildings. The farm exploded into flames. There was smoke, fire, debris, everything. You could see it. Neighbours heard the explosion. They came running to help. But Kehoe was already behind the wheel of his car. He looked at the rescuers congregated and said, "Boys, you are my friends. You better get out of here. You better go down the school." Then he literally tore off, leaving them confused, and the farm engulfed in his wake.
Oh my gosh. This gives me chills. It's so, it is sinister. That's like the best way I can think to describe it. It's chilling.
So as he was driving away, they heard another terrifying explosion in the distance. Some sources said it could be heard from 10 miles in every direction.
Wow.
It was the Bath Consolidated School. Now, there's a guy that ran to the farm after the first explosion. I've seen his name two ways. It's O.H. Buck or O.H. Bush. And he told the reporters, "I began to feel as if the world was coming to an end."
Oh my gosh, that's so ominous.
It kind of sounds
Apocalyptic. It really does. Yeah. That's so scary.
So when the school exploded, the northwest wing of the school was completely obliterated. Walls were destroyed, the roof lay on the ground. There were bodies of children protruding from the bricks and stone, arms and legs partially visible, sort of.
Ooh, that's just a horror story, isn't it? Ugh.
There were kids looking out from the windows, their faces covered with blood, dust, and between the splintered beams of wood, again, just kids' faces, limbs, everything. Mothers ran screaming to the scene. Every family in the town had at least one child pretty much enrolled in the school. So it was chaotic.
It was devastating.
The cries of the children could be heard. Mothers were fought with rescuers to pull their children from the wreckage. Men worked in the rubble, essentially tossing aside bricks and pushing twisted metal as they searched for survivors. Eyewitnesses and survivors were interviewed afterwards by newspaper reporters. First grade teacher Bernice Sterling told an Associated Press reporter that the explosion was like an earthquake. The air seemed to be full of children and flying desks and books. Children were tossed high in the air. Some were catapulted out of the building. Eyewitness Robert Gates said that the scene was pure chaos. Mother after mother came running into the schoolyard and demanded information about her child, and on seeing the lifeless form lying on the lawn, sobbed and swooned. In no time, more than 100 men were at work tearing away the debris of the school, and nearly as many women were frantically poring over the timber and broken bricks for traces of their children. I saw more than one woman lift clusters of bricks held together by mortar heavier than the average man could have handled without a crowbar. I suppose in that moment the adrenaline is just...
Yeah, just trying to find their babies.
Supernatural.
Oh my God. It's
like
just...
literally superhero power.
Yeah, exactly. It's harrowing.
Ellsworth, so Monty Ellsworth, who self-published his book, he said, "I saw one mother, Mrs. Eugene Hart, sitting on the bank a short distance from the school with a little dead girl on each side of her and holding a little boy, Percy, who died a short time after they got him to the hospital." This was about the time that Kehoe blew up his car in the streets, severely wounding Percy, the oldest child of Mr. and Mrs. Hart.
There's no sense in anything he's doing, but, you know, the victims, it seems like they're innocent. He's obviously had, you know, background with being awful to animals, being cruel to animals, and then he's targeting children. It's like they've done nothing to you.
Well, exactly. You know, the people that, you know, you would think he would want to punish would be the ones who are like, not happy, but like are all for the taxes being increased. But he seems he wants to hurt them in the worst way possible rather than hurting themselves. He's hurting their children, their families, which will cause them more pain.
Yeah, true.
So it's evil.
Oh, absolutely.
Pure evil. Ellsworth also recalled that there was a pile of children of about 5 or 6 under the roof. Ellsworth volunteered to drive back to his farm and get a rope heavy enough to pull the school roof off of those children's bodies. When he returned to the farm, he saw Kehoe driving in the opposite direction, heading toward the school. And Ellsworth said he grinned and waved his hand. When he grinned, I could see both rows of his teeth.
That's creepy as fuck.
Devil.
Yeah.
So about less than 30 minutes after the explosion, Kehoe arrived on the scene of the explosion of the school. No one knew that his car had been loaded with dynamite and the metal debris. He saw his supposed nemesis, the board president Emery Hayek, and waved him over to the car. As Emery approached, Kehoe picked up the rifle from the seat next to him, aimed it at the dynamite and fired. A gentleman called Charles Horson testified at the inquest that he saw the two men grapple over some type of long gun. So then another terrible explosion rocked the town. A huge ball of flame shot upward and shrapnel was sent flying in every direction. It ripped apart trees, it splintered houses, it shattered windows and destroyed everything in its path.
Just annihilated everything. That's just so scary.
There was an 8-year-old student named Guy Cleo Clayton who was dazed from the first blast, but he had survived it. He was walking along the street when the truck exploded and he was struck in the stomach by a large piece of metal from the blast. He died a few hours later.
Oh my God, this is awful.
So obviously with an explosion like that and the metal in it, it was spread over a large area and it caused obviously extensive damage to cars, even cars parked like half a block away. The roofs caught fire from the burning gasoline. It injured several others and mortally wounded Postmaster Glenn Smith, who lost a leg and died before making it to the hospital. People were confused. They didn't understand what had happened. There were some that thought that they were under some sort of military attack. For what reason, they didn't know. There were rumours that there was going to be more explosions. In the distance, Kehoe's farm was still burning, and people could see sort of the smoke. It was like black smoke in the air. There were still smaller explosions going on at the farm as sort of leftover pyrrole continued to explode. Pieces of bodies even, were strewn across the grass and in bushes, and many people have fainted or become hysterical. Over 100 people have been injured and more injuries were being found every minute. It was at that point, though, that no one really knew how many had been killed. Minutes after Kehoe's car exploded, the Lansing Fire and police departments arrived on the scene. They were followed by the Michigan State Police and representatives of the State Department of Public Safety. Nothing could have prepared them for... I mean, they were hardened veterans as well, so nothing could have prepared them for what they saw. It was basically like a battle scene from a war. And... hell.
Yeah, absolutely.
Telephone operators stayed at their stations for hours to summon doctors, undertakers, area hospital workers and anyone else who could help. The Lansing Fire Department sent several firefighters and its chief. A local physician by the name of Dr. J.A. Crum and his wife, who was a nurse, they both served in World War I and had returned to Bath to open a pharmacy. After the explosion, the Crums turned their pharmacy into basically like a triage centre.
Oh, bless them.
People were enlisted to use their to use their cars as additional ambulances to take survivors and family members to the area hospitals. And the town hall served as basically a temporary mortuary. A short distance away from Kehoe's destroyed car, Mrs. Frank Smith stood in the front of her home watching in horror as the events took place before her eyes. In the corner of her garden, in the flowers and the shrubs, she saw a crumpled mass of bloody clothing. She looked closer and she realised that it was part of a human body which had been mangled almost beyond recognition. Protruding from the rear pocket of the clothing, there were some papers, and she removed them and looked at them to see what they were, to see if there was some sort of identification. It was a bank book from the Lily State Bank of Tecumseh, and Andrew Kehoe's name was on it. Mrs. Smith ran to a police officer who was directing rescue efforts at the school, and he brought over some of Kehoe's neighbours to view the body, and they positively identified him as Andrew Kehoe.
Oh my gosh.
So after that, they obviously then finally understood what Kehoe said to them as he was driving from the farm about, don't be here, go down to the school.
Yeah.
Hundreds of people worked in the wreckage all day and into the night in an effort to find and rescue any children that were buried beneath. Contractors sent their men to assist. Many other people came to the scene in response to pleas for help. About 34 firefighters and the chief of Lansing Fire Department, I think I said as before, had arrived, and the Michigan State police officers were managing traffic to and from the scene. Injured and dying were transported to Sparrow Hospital and St Lawrence Hospital in Lansing. The construction of the St Lawrence facility had actually been financed in large by Lawrence Price, who was Nellie's uncle.
Oh.
And he was also formerly an executive in charge of Oldsmobile's Lansing Car Assembly. Michigan Governor Fred W. Green arrived during the afternoon and assisted with the relief work, carting bricks away from the scene. The Lawrence Baking Company sent a truck filled with pies and sandwiches, which was served to rescuers in the township's community hall. Whilst they were searching for survivors and victims, an additional £500, so that's about 230 kilograms, I think, of dynamite, which had failed to detonate, was found in the south wing of the school. They also recovered a container of gasoline in the school's basement. The container was rigged with a tube, and it was speculated that the plan was for the gasoline fumes to ignite from a spark, scattering the burning fuel throughout the basement. In the undamaged section of the school, it was found that Kehoe had concealed explosives in 6 lengths of ease-trough pipe, 3 bamboo fishing rods, and something called windmill rods that were placed in the ceiling. So because they found those, they had to stop searching, preservation of life.
Yeah, that's it, because something else could go up at any time.
Exactly.
Gosh, it's so scary.
It's a sad fact that, yes, you obviously want bodies to be recovered, victims to be recovered, survivors to be recovered, but they don't know how many survivors there are. Mm-hmm. The worst has already happened to those who have died as a result. So it's preserving their lives and the lives of other people around at this point.
Absolutely.
So they did disarm the devices. They found an alarm clock timed to go off at 8:45, the same as when the farm exploded. Mm-hmm. So investigators speculate that the initial explosion may have caused a short circuit in the second set of bombs, preventing them from detonating. They searched the building and then they went back to the recovery work after they'd recovered everything. If the rest of the dynamite had gone off, the entire school would have been demolished and the death toll would most likely have been in the hundreds.
Oh my gosh.
The bodies of the dead were carried out of the ruins of the
It's all right. It's a lot.
It's harrowing. Bodies of the dead were carried out of the ruins of the Bath Consolidated School. They were placed in rows on the scorched grass and hastily covered up. Parents were brought in to identify the remains of children, some of whom were horribly burned and disfigured by the blast.
Hell.
The following day, police and fire officials gathered at the Kehoe farm to investigate the fires. On the 19th of May, which is the day after the bombing, Nellie Kehoe was found. State troopers had searched for her throughout Michigan, thinking that she was still in a tuberculosis sanatorium. Her body was so disfigured, she went unnoticed by everyone who walked past her.
Oh my gosh.
She'd been burned almost beyond recognition. Her left arm and her right leg were both missing. Only the axle and wheels remained of the wheelbarrow on which her corpse had been placed. All of the Kehoe farm building had been destroyed, and all of the animals were dead. Oh. Again, I've left out certain details. Yeah. It was then discovered that the amount of unused equipment and materials on the property could have paid off the mortgage.
Ked, why didn't you think of that?
Rage.
Yeah, exactly. Psychopath.
He'd been too obsessed with the taxes to realise, basically, I think.
Yeah, like tunnel vision.
Yeah, literally, that's what it was. And just focuses fury on that board member as well.
Mm. Yeah.
It's not his fault. That's the way the world works, mate, I'm afraid.
That's it.
Investigators found a wooden sign that was wired to the farm's fence with Kehoe's last message stencilled on it. Criminals are made, not born. Again, it's that whole nature-nurture.
Yeah.
Maybe. But then having said that, at 14, before his head injury, he potentially killed his stepmother.
Yeah, so I feel like he was already nuts, perhaps.
Yeah, don't
but
get
not
me
in a good
wrong.
way.
I do believe like there are circumstances which can impact someone to maybe push them over the edge, but I think there has to be a little tiny bit
Of something there already. Yeah, I agree. I completely agree.
I don't think you just switch.
No.
I mean, unless you're insane.
Yeah, or in which case
Potentially.
there's something wrong there
Yeah.
initially, so yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose it does depend on how much stuff happens to you. Sometimes you just go, F it, and then I'm going to just destroy the world. But
Yeah.
he's had money troubles.
Yeah.
So has probably everyone in that village.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're not going around blowing up anything.
Yeah, exactly.
So newspaper headlines like all over the world reported on what had happened. They looked for reasons for the rampage. There weren't any, not really. And the community was obviously devastated, and the loss could not be measured in simply the number of children that had been killed. No one in the community had not been touched by the tragedy. Everyone had lost a relative, a friend, classmate, a teacher. In addition to the human toll, Bath faced a financial catastrophe, so a new school would have had to have been built. So most likely taxes are going to go up again. But obviously when there's a tragedy like that, you start getting donations in as well.
Yeah, okay.
So
yeah.
The American Red Cross set up operations in the Crumb Pharmacy, and they did what they could to provide aid and comfort for the victims. The Lansing Red Cross headquarters stayed open until 11:30 on the night of the bombing to answer telephone calls, update the list of the dead and injured, and provide information. They also managed donations that were sent to pay for both the medical expenses of the injured and the burial costs of the dead. People from across the world expressed sympathy to the families in the community. There were letters from Italian school children. One fifth-grade class wrote, "Even if we are small, we understand all the sorrow and misfortune that has struck our dear brothers."
Oh my gosh.
God, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah, that's
absolutely heartbreaking. Another Italian class wrote, "We are praying to God to give to the unfortunate mothers and fathers the strength to bear the great sorrow that has descent on them. We are near to you in spirit." Fifth graders. How old are you in fifth grade? And they had more compassion
Yeah.
than, well, Kehoe had none. He had no compassion for humankind.
Minus compassion, that guy.
9 years old.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just crazy to me. So over the next few days, all of the funerals took place, 18 of them being held on Saturday, Saturday the 22nd of May. The last funeral was held on the Sunday, which was also the same day as Charles Lindbergh completed the first solo transatlantic flight to Paris. So both of those, don't get me wrong, that's an incredible feat. But they both shared sort of newspaper space. But I feel like, I don't know. Yes, it's an incredible feat, but, 10, 11 years old for fifth grade. I just feel like that was more
definitely.
deserving.
I wonder if they felt that because it was so awful, they needed to put something positive.
But they could have put it on, like, the next page.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. I think they might have shared headlines or something like that, so it's both on
Right.
the front page, and then
Okay.
obviously probably a continuation of the stories inside. But
Yeah.
I just feel like tragedy. Yay, something good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Over 100,000 automobiles passed through Bath that weekend, a staggering amount of traffic for such a small village. There were some people in the community that regarded it as an unwanted intrusion into their time of grief, which I can get, but most accepted it as a show of sympathy and support for surrounding communities. But wherever there's a tragedy or something like that, you're going to get some heartless people who are just curious, rubberneckers, sort of making their way to the town. But so did the Ku Klux Klan.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Who proclaimed that the actions of Kehoe, a Roman Catholic, were the result of his adherence to the stance of the Catholic Church against what they considered Protestant or godless schools.
Shut the up. Just get out of it. Just fuck off.
Leave them be.
Yeah, just
Rotters,
no,
a lot of them. All types. The coroner's inquest was held the following week. I think it was on like maybe the Wednesday. The coroner had arrived at Bath on the day of the disaster. He'd sworn in 6 community leaders to serve as the jury. The Clinton County prosecutor conducted the examination, and dozens of Bath citizens and law enforcement personnel testified before the jury. Although there was never sort of a doubt that Andrew had carried out the bombing, the jury was there to determine if the school board or any of its employees were guilty of criminal negligence.
Right, okay.
The testimony lasted for more than a week, and in the end, the jury was exonerated, and the school board, the jury exonerated the school board and its employees. The jury concluded that Kehoe conducted himself sanely and so concealed his operations that there was no cause to suspect any of his actions. And we further find the school board and Frank Smith, the janitor of the school building, were not negligent in and about their duties and were not guilty of any negligence in not discovering Kehoe's plan.
It sounded like he did a very good job of hiding things and doing it sort of.
He had opportunity.
Stages. Yeah, I get. Yeah,
working on the repairs, just taking things in with him. Sanely, yeah. So he wasn't insane, criminally or medically insane. I mean, we would say that that's insane, but he wasn't deemed to have. Yeah, by definition. I think it's insane behaviour, but you can perhaps carry out insane behaviours whilst being of sound mind. It's just that makes sense.
It does. It's a funny one, isn't it? Because there's obviously arguments for both sides, and it's just like, well, it's not always that black and white, is it? So it's quite difficult to actually say this is or isn't.
And he was supposed to be an intelligent man, dependable, things like that. So he has normal perception. Yeah. He knows what's right and wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's just going for the jugular, essentially. I think there might have been some sort of underlying, perhaps, mental illness, but I think mainly it was anger.
Yeah, it's just been
something that he perceived to be injustice. And as a result, he's just done what he's accusing other people of doing, but on a grander scale.
Yeah, that's it.
It was determined that Kehoe had murdered Emery Hayek. I mean, no doubt. They found that the school was destroyed as part of a plan that was carried out by Kehoe alone, without the aid of conspirators. He had willfully caused the death of 44 people, including his wife Nellie. On the 22nd of August, about 3 months after the bombing, fourth grader Beatrice Gibbs died following hip surgery. It was the final death attributed to the Bath School massacre. Hers was the 45th and final death directly attributed to what had happened. And this makes it the deadliest attack ever to occur in an American school.
And that's not taking into consideration all the animals he killed as well. Yeah. So it's just ungodly.
Richard Fritz, whose older sister Marjorie Fritz was killed in the explosion, he was injured and died almost a year later of myocarditis at the age of 8. So although he's not included in the list of victims, his death is thought to have been directly caused by an infection resulting from his injuries.
Yeah, because he wouldn't have been in hospital with those injuries had this kid not done what he done.
Yeah. So we could go as 46.
Yeah.
The jury returned a judgment of suicide as the cause of Andrew Kehoe's death. His body was claimed by his sister. He had no ceremony and was buried in an unmarked grave in an initially unnamed cemetery. It was later revealed that he was buried in a pauper section of Mount Rest Cemetery in St. John's, Michigan. Nellie was buried in Mount Hope Cemetery in Lansing by her family, but her tombstone bears her maiden name of Price.
Good.
So after all of this, obviously, you kind of sit with it for a while, but then you have to move on.
Yeah.
And that's what happened with the people of Bath. Governor Fred Green created the Bath Relief Fund with the money supplied by donors, the state and local governments. People from all over the country did donate to the fund as well, which did allow for the demolition of the damaged portion of the school and the construction of a new wing with the donated funds. On the 5th of September 1927, so really not that long after, school resumed.
Now that place would be haunted to couldn't it? I think.
Well, we'll get on to that.
Oh, right.
True crime and paranormal in this one.
Now,
For the school year of 1927 to 1928, these classes were held in the community hall, the township hall, and 2 retail buildings. Most of the surviving victims returned.
wow.
O.M. Brandt of Luther, Michigan was appointed as the new superintendent. Warren Holmes, who was a Lansing architect, donated construction plans, and the school board approved the contracts for the new building on September 14th. On September 15th, Michigan's US Senator James J. Couzens presented his personal check for $75,000, which in 2019 was equivalent to $1,103,879.
Oh, good for that guy.
To the Bath Construction Fund to help build the new school. So the damaged portion of the school was demolished. The new wing was constructed, but during the reconstruction, more dynamite was found in the building on 3 separate occasions.
Do you know what? I was going to ask you that. I was thinking, what if there was more that they didn't uncover because, you know, with all the debris, it would have been really hard to find absolutely everything.
Yeah, and, you know, you've got different parts of the school, that sort of thing. The James Couzens Agricultural School was dedicated on the 18th of August 1928. The farm was completely ploughed to ensure that no explosives were hidden in the ground and was sold at auction to pay the mortgage.
Right.
Carlton W. Angle, who was an artist, presented the board with a memorial statue in 1928 entitled Girl with a Cat. I think the Bath residents know it as Girl with a Kitten.
That's cute.
The Bath School Museum in the school district's middle school contains many of the items connected with the disaster, including the statue. In 1975, the Couzens building was demolished and the site was redeveloped as the James Couzens Memorial Park, which was dedicated to the victims. In the centre of the park is the school's original cupola. I did read what a cupola was, but I can't remember.
It looks like the top of like a tower.
Yeah, I guess maybe like the top of the school.
Yeah, maybe. That's very clever. I quite like the fact that they've used that as a, you know, part of the school is used as a memorial.
A rounded dome forming, or I can't read that.
Adorning a roof or ceiling.
Oh,
yeah, so like a tower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that it obviously survived the disaster, and it remained on the school until the building was torn down.
Wow.
A Michigan State historical marker was installed in the park in 1991 by the Michigan Historical Commission. And in 2002, a bronze plaque bearing the names of those killed in the disaster was placed on a large stone near the entrance of the park. On November 3rd, 2008, the town announced that the tombstones had been donated for Emily and Robert Bromont, who were the last 2 bombing victims whose graves were still unmarked. Mm. A grant from a foundation paid for the grave markers, and in September 2014, a gravestone was installed at the grave of Richard A. Fritz, whose death in 1928 was attributed to the injury sustained in the explosion. This gravestone was paid for an author writing about the disaster for a book.
Right, wow.
In 2011, a documentary on the disaster was released, and it included interviews of various survivors, which had been taped starting in 2004. On the 18th of May 2017, so that would have been the 90th anniversary of the disaster, it was marked with a panel discussion at the Bath Middle School. Medical experts have seen this unique act of historic school terrorism as a way to gain perspective on paediatric patterns of injury and future disaster preparedness.
There needs to be something positive that comes out of it, like as well as the community all getting together, because, you know, that's just defying his disgusting intentions, you know, like ploughing on and getting things done, and the fact that it's still very much in people's minds now.
You say that, but this is also known as the forgotten disaster. So
I've never heard of
no,
it.
neither had I. Like when you think of school massacres, you think of Columbine, you think of Sandy Hook.
Yeah.
I had never thought that. Obviously, the people in America will probably know more about it, particularly those in close proximity to it. But the fact it was in the 20s.
Yeah.
That just seems quite bizarre to me. You don't think of school disasters in the 20s. You think
of it as more of a modern
like
crime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of the families did move away from Bath in the years that followed, but those that stayed behind, obviously the history of that day was always present, and the community remains a place where death came calling on what should have been a beautiful spring day. Instead, it was the day when the twisted obsessions of a dangerous man claimed the lives of dozens of innocent people and forever stained the landscape of rural Michigan. It's heartbreaking.
It's absolutely awful. It really is just the most atrocious thing.
I just can't sort of bring my head around, like, you're having a very normal day, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there's a boom and just the world essentially collapses on you.
And the fact that it's all pre-planned and has been pre-planned for a long time, like it just makes it even more disturbing.
Yeah. So with an event such as that of the Bath School Massacre, obviously there's going to be some sort of ghostly tale that comes with it. There have been legends that that are attributed to the scene of the disaster. People claim to have had experiences at the park where the two schools once stood. Voices are heard, cries for help. There have been recordings obtained that allegedly contain the eerie voices of the lost, still seeking help after decades have passed. There are unexplained cold spots, as well as a strange touch of unseen hands, as if they're sort of reaching out from beyond the grave. According to first-hand accounts, the massacre site is not the only place in Bath that's haunted. A funeral home on Main Street, where many of the bodies of the victims were prepared for burial, they were turned into an apartment house many years after the massacre.
I wouldn't want to fucking live there.
In 2000, there was a tenant that moved in and began to experience sort of odd goings-on almost immediately. I think it's even said that the night she moved in.
Fuck that.
She climbed into bed, she felt the unsettling stare of someone watching her, and then after that it just got worse. She heard footsteps going up and down stairs that had been removed years before.
Oh my God, that's really, really eerie.
Voices coming from the basement, toilets flushed by themselves, taps turned on and off. She claimed she heard sobbing and crying of children. When she heard the sound of breaking glass one night, she called the police. Officers came to search the house, but when she unlocked the basement door, the men refused to go down and look around.
Blame them, really.
The landlord blamed her for the damage, and he came round sort of the following day to sort of basically have a go at her and whatnot, she showed him the police report and he was puzzled. A little while after that, she began seeing ghosts. The first victim she saw said that his name was George Hall. He had been 8 years old when he died at the school. According to the witness, George had no legs.
Oh, poor George.
She claimed he was a prankster and loved the tenant's cat along with other animals. There was also a little girl who was missing a hand and wanted the tenant to look for it. The little girl told the tenant that she'd been wearing a ring that was special to her when she died at the school, and the ring was still on one of her missing fingers.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that is just heartbreaking.
During the time that she lived in the house, the tenant stated that ghostly occupants were always nearby and seemed to need something from her, something that she seemed unable to give. They wanted help, but she didn't know how to help them. And for reasons she couldn't understand, the children were unable to rest. To be fair, the lives were taken too soon.
Yeah.
They won't be able to rest because there isn't the peace there. The manner in which they died is horrific.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of unanswered questions, unfinished business probably, and that's why they potentially still linger.
Yeah.
There are a lot of this was taken from websites, muse.jhu.edu, the American Hauntings Inc., and bathschooldisaster.com. There are several books as well. There's a book called A Pale Horse Was Death by Troy Taylor and Renee Cruz. In 2009, Ernie Bernstein published Bath Massacre, America's First School Bombing, and that is the book that kind of is seen as the authority on the subject.
Right.
In that book, it says that the reader learns of the bravery and service of Claire Gates, who was just a teenager at the time, and she helped Michigan State Police neutralise the remaining live-wired explosives that Kehoe had placed in the basement of the school. Whenever they spotted a wire high up on a beam, officers shined their flashlights so Gates could see exactly the place at which the volatile wire needed to be cut.
What a brave girl. That's incredible. She's like an angel on earth.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's also insight into the raw emotion and trauma experienced by those who lost loved ones. Ralph Witchell's sister Elizabeth had died instantly in the school explosion when an enormous beam hit her directly in the head. At Elizabeth's funeral, this gets me, Ralph tried hard to hold in his emotions. He was having a very difficult time until he thought of elephants, specifically circus elephants. And he said, if I keep thinking of circus elephants, then I won't cry.
Oh my gosh, that's heartbreaking.
And I'm going to end on a quote that Arnie said himself in the book. From act of evil emerges communal solicitude. Survivors, family and friends gather to mourn in comfort.
Very well said.
And that's the story of the first American school bombing.
No, that was a lot, wasn't it?
Yeah, I really kind of brought down the mood after the last two.
No, but the thing is, it's really, it's very important that the story is told because, like you say, look, I'd never heard of it, and although people in America might know it, in the UK perhaps we haven't heard of it. So,
and we're quite lucky; we don't experience like school massacres or anything like that as much as what America does.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know what it is, but we just don't. I suppose. Sorry, excuse me. It's not as easy for us to get things like guns because mostly it's either guns or bombings.
Yeah.
So Mark's just writing something now on the plaque. 7 groups had the same surname.
Gosh.
Well, Bath was a small village. So like I said, there wasn't anyone that didn't lose someone in that explosion.
Yeah.
Yeah, imagine losing multiple kids in a day. Well, there was that woman, Mrs. Hart, with her 2 kiddies, and then Percy.
It's so dreadful.
After. It's awful.
It's just incomprehensible. It's dreadful. I mean,
that's the thing. Like you said the story needs to be told.
Yeah.
And it needs to be told in detail. You can't.
Yeah.
Things like this when there are children involved. I know we go on about how we don't like kids and stuff like that, but you don't want them to die.
We don't mean it.
We don't want them murdered. We don't want them massacred.
No, of course not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's horrific. It's harrowing, and it's.
I don't know what to say, to be perfectly honest. You stumped me, babe. I'm without words. It's just that there aren't enough words to describe it. It's something else.
I was gonna actually do something on Vegas, but I had started doing research in this case before Vegas, and I thought I'm just gonna stick with it. I can continue with the Vegas stuff after.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I found this one by accident. I was looking at something else.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden that came up, and I saw there was some relevant information about Carr.
Actually, very relevant because that sort of
And then, some of the bombs being wired up with spark plugs.
Yeah, there's actually
battery.
lots of links. Yeah, it's just disturbing as hell.
But yeah, so that's that.
Well,
that's when hell came to Michigan.
Question mark? No, it was. It's very important that it was told. Shall we go straight on to get in bin, get in pocket, and random facts?
Yeah, I did have a get in the bin, but I forgot it. This seems to be a constant theme with me.
To be honest, I didn't prepare any for today's recordings. I will go first and say that get in the bin is me and my inability to drink water.
I'm going to ride that one as well.
Yeah,
Like,
go for it.
I said to you earlier, it's like, I really need to drink some water today. I drank none yesterday. It was all coffee.
Yeah.
And my pee was basically like brown tar.
Yeah, and the thing is with us, we don't get thirsty.
No.
So we have to consciously think, must drink, must drink, must drink. It just doesn't, it's a nightmare.
Horrendous.
Got to get in your pocket.
Again, I had one, but now I've forgotten it. Oh, laughing so much that it tires you out.
Yeah, that is a good one.
You sort of then have this sort of dreamy, sleepy,
Yeah.
But then I make it worse and then tell you about the first school bombing.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
I mean, swings and roundabouts, isn't it? My get in my pocket is Sundays. I love Sundays. They're my favourite day of the week because it's the one day where like nobody expects anything from me. So like the stress of work and things is just sort of put aside for one day.
See, I don't like Sundays because I don't feel I can fully relax because I know I've got to get everything ready for the coming week.
Yep.
You know, it's things like meal prepping, getting things, I go to work in trackies and I get changed in scrubs there, but I've got to wash my jumper that I wear, wash my hair. No.
I'm going to keep it as my get in the pocket. And
You're allowed to.
Okay. And Reg and I are going to watch a film after this.
Just made me incredibly jealous.
Sorry.
It's all right.
So Goob's get in the bin is his inability to go to bed.
Yeah.
He keeps sleeping on the sofa and then feels terrible the next day.
Like he started to drift off yesterday and it was late. I was still working on uni and this. I was like, why don't you just go to bed? He goes, yeah. I was like, you'll feel better if you go to bed. Yeah, I'll keep an eye on Eddie. I was like, I can do that. I'm up. I'm awake.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then when I eventually finished everything like 2:45 in the morning, I was like, right, bedtime.
Yeah, right. Get to
And then, bless him, he likes to lay on top of the bed to warm the bed up before he gets in it. So then he's awake for
like
even
a
longer
cat.
rather than just going straight to the bathroom, brushing his teeth and just getting into bed.
Right, okay.
Yeah. His get in his pocket is Ed running up the stairs when we were recording this. So he's had a poorly leg for a week, so he must be feeling better.
Yeah, that is a very good
All of a sudden we just heard this noise. It's like, is that Ed going upstairs? We sit for a little bit. No, that's Ed going upstairs.
Definitely Ed going up the stairs. Has anybody got a random fact?
You go.
Are you all right, babe? My random fact is that Reggie, when I rescued him, his name was Bambi.
Yeah, no.
I changed it.
Reggie's so much better.
Yeah, changed it to Reggie Elvis.
My random fact is that I'm currently... So I finished the books for uni and I'm writing the assignment, ready to hand that in. So I've had a bit of time, or I say I've had a bit of time. I always make sure I read before I go to sleep.
Yep.
It's just something that's basically non-negotiable.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a relaxation thing for me.
Yeah.
But I'm reading Tender is the Flesh, which is about how...
Is that porn?
No, it sounds it though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
No, so Tender is the Flesh is... it was originally written by a Spanish author, I believe. And it's about sort of there was a virus that infected all of the animals. So all of...
For fuck's sake.
Honestly, it's horrific. So there are no animals left. There's a few birds.
Nope.
And
That would give you nightmares. How does that not give you nightmares?
But they started eating human meat and now they breed humans for consumption.
Oh, Jesus, I'm so glad I'm vegan.
So it's basically a book about cannibalism.
It's
a very controversial book. It might have been banned at one point.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to read that ever. Do you want to read Goobs?
So he has been sitting on a Gallagher's face for the last 3 hours. He thinks it's Liam.
It is Liam.
It is Liam.
So that was the present that Dave got me for one birthday, and it's a cushion with Liam Gallagher's face on it, and it's on my office chair, and he's been sat on it.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
How does that feel for you? How is it for you?
Lovely. He's sat on Liam, and then Noel is staring at him from the
quite nice
mood
actually.
board. Quite nice. There we go. All right. So Apologies for the slight drop
in audio.
Okay. All right. We didn't notice it, but for the listeners, apparently there's a drop in audio. But
Okay.
So if you want to contact us, follow us, send us emails, listen to us and watch us, go to linktree/Cars of the Macabre. Everything is on there. Get in touch. We love to hear from you.
Like, share, subscribe, download, all of the good things. Thank you very much to Goober Goober at Park Lane Studios for the sound, the visuals. Sorry for us. Except for the little bit that sounds.
Okay.
Apparently
There's a little bit of sound in there.
But yeah, I think I'm ready to.
Sorry,
What did you just say?
I said there's a little bit of sound in there.
Oh, I'm glad we ended it on that note.
We ended on that note. There we go.
Well, until next time, stay spooky, bitches.